The crisp autumn air of Willowbrook Estates, a Houston enclave usually characterized by its beige mailboxes and regulation-height grass, was about to be thick with the scent of diesel defiance and a Texas-sized serving of petty revenge. Caleb Monroe, a man whose life revolved around the honest toil of maintaining agricultural equipment in his legally permitted barn, found himself in the crosshairs of Lori Blackwell, the self-appointed queen of the local homeowners association. Lori, a woman whose pink blazers were as blinding as her ambition and whose metallic clipboard served as her scepter, descended upon Caleb one Tuesday morning, her high heels clicking across his gravel driveway like a countdown to conflict. "Are you the owner of this industrial facility?" she'd inquired, her tone dripping with disdain, as if Caleb's barn, a fixture long before the HOA's existence, was a toxic blight upon her pristine suburban kingdom. Caleb, a man of simple integrity, attempted to reason, presenting his county permits and explaining the vital role his business played for local farmers. But Lori, whose smile could freeze the Gulf of Mexico, was unmoved. "Legal doesn't always mean appropriate, Mr. Monroe," she'd retorted, her words laced with the icy conviction of someone who believed her aesthetic preferences superseded established law. "The smell of diesel fuel and machinery noise is affecting our property values." She promised a thorough investigation, her departing heels clicking out a rhythm that sounded distinctly like a threat. Caleb, initially naive to the depths of Lori's zealotry, believed his paperwork and a reasonable conversation would suffice. He underestimated the ferocity of a woman who managed the HOA like NASA, lacking only a shuttle to launch her ego into orbit. The next morning, the war truly began. Lori's blood-red Porsche, a gleaming symbol of her suburban sovereignty, was parked diagonally across Caleb's driveway, completely blocking access to his barn. An official-looking HOA notice on the windshield declared the area under investigation, no entry authorized. Lori herself stood sentinel, arms crossed, a frozen smile plastered on her face, waving a menacingly friendly little wave with her fingertips. Caleb's quiet life had become a war zone. For 3 excruciating days, the Porsche remained a monument to petty tyranny. Caleb's livelihood was held hostage. Phone calls, knocks on her door, despite her visible presence inside, and polite notes explaining the urgent needs of farmers whose crops awaited harvest were met with defiant silence. Lori had found her perfect weapon, Caleb's own property. Desperation mounted as a storm brewed, threatening to destroy the crops of 3 contracted farmers. It was Tom Whitman, a retired property lawyer and Caleb's neighbor, who shed light on Lori's modus operandi. "She's got a pattern," Tom revealed, presenting a folder documenting Lori's past crusades. A 6-month war against a child's basketball hoop, the forced removal of a family's vegetable garden declared a commercial agricultural operation. Lori, Tom explained, wasn't driven by pure malice, but by a fervent, almost fanatical belief that she was the thin blue line protecting Willowbrook Estates from suburban apocalypse, with Caleb's barn representing the ultimate descent into chaos. Crucially, Tom pointed out, Caleb possessed something Lori's previous victims lacked: legally sound permits and commercial rights predating the HOA's very existence. Caleb's attempt at a direct, respectful appeal to Lori was met with icy disdain. "That's not my problem, Mr. Monroe," she stated, her power-driven resolve hardening. "The only solution is for you to relocate." She then ominously mentioned paperwork he'd find in his mailbox. This turned out to be a certified letter from Harris County Court. Lori was seeking an injunction to shut down his operation, accusing him of operating an illegal industrial facility and posing environmental and safety hazards. The hearing was scheduled for Monday morning, a mere 3 days away. The fight was no longer just about his business. It was about his home, his family, and his right to exist peacefully. The weekend was a blur of frantic legal research, fueled by borrowed law books and his wife Sarah's unwavering, albeit worried, support. Their 8-year-old son, Tyler, with childlike clarity, reminded Caleb, "But you help farmers grow food. That's important." Lori's case, Caleb discovered, was meticulously constructed with manipulated photos, one-sided noise complaints, and fear-mongering statements. However, Texas property law was clear on grandfathered rights and the protection of agricultural operations. His pre-existing, fully permitted business was legally sound. Monday morning at the courthouse felt like walking into a lion's den. Lori, in a Navy business suit, clipboard in hand, looked every bit the Supreme Court litigator. Her attorney presented a damning, albeit misleading, case against Caleb's industrial pollution. When it was Caleb's turn, his hands trembled, but his voice was steady. He presented his permits, his environmental compliance certificates, and the crucial fact that his operation was legally established before the Willowbrook Estates HOA even existed. He then exposed Lori's pattern of targeting residents who didn't conform to her vision. Judge Richardson, a man who had clearly seen his share of HOA disputes, listened intently. His questioning of Lori was sharp and incisive. "Mrs. Blackwell, is it true that you've been preventing Mr. Monroe from accessing his own property?" Lori's composure faltered as she tried to justify her Porsche blockade as a legitimate safety inspection. The judge's incredulity was palpable. "Let me understand this correctly," he boomed. "You're telling me that a Porsche 911 is somehow official HOA safety equipment?" A ripple of chuckles went through the courtroom. Lori's face flushed crimson. The judge, after examining Caleb's permits, delivered his verdict with finality. "Mrs. Blackwell, you're asking this court to override legally established property rights. That's not how the law works in Texas. I'm denying the request for an injunction. Mr. Monroe's operation is legally permitted. You and any associates are hereby ordered to immediately cease blocking access. Any further interference will result in criminal charges." Victory in court, however, was not the end. The look in Lori's eyes was not defeat, but a chilling brew of rage and panic. Driving home, Caleb found not a cleared driveway, but a full-blown neighborhood uprising orchestrated by Lori. 6 vehicles now barricaded his barn, surrounded by about 10 people brandishing homemade signs. "Protect our community values. Stop industrial pollution. Save our children from toxic machinery." Lori, now in a bright yellow safety vest over her business suit, had transformed from defeated litigant to defiant community organizer, declaring a legitimate community safety action. She announced she'd contacted Channel 11 News about this environmental emergency, positioning herself as a crusader. She had weaponized her neighbors' fears. Tom Whitman's insight was crucial. "Lori's not just fighting you anymore. She's fighting for her entire identity." With a hurricane-upgraded storm giving Caleb less than 18 hours to harvest Jim Crawford's corn, a cold, calculated determination replaced his anger. He remembered his 1982 International Harvester Combine, 15 tons of vintage American steel, a hobby restoration project, sitting under a tarp in his old barn. Lori Blackwell was about to learn what happens when you declare war on a Texas farmer with a deadline and a very large piece of machinery. The roar of the old harvester shattering the suburban quiet was like thunder. After an hour of preparation, Caleb climbed into the cab. The 15-ton beast, though 4 decades old, rumbled towards the front of his property at a deliberate 3 miles per hour. The effect on Lori's protest camp was immediate. People scattered like startled birds. But Lori, a general refusing to abandon her post, stood her ground, defiantly positioned in front of her Porsche, her face a priceless tableau of disbelief, outrage, and a dawning flicker of genuine fear. For the first time, Lori Blackwell looked utterly out of control.